the house. I ran up the stairs. You still there? Yeah. Sorry about that. I'm glad I freaking pushed it back. I got stuck waiting at baggage claim for like 45 minutes. Um, okay, cool. All right, so good to connect with you. So you're at Texas Tech. Here, I'll kill it. You want to do that? Usually how I start these things out is give you guys a little context on my background so you know what that looks like, and then want to hear about your situation, what you're trying to accomplish transfer wise in terms of like academic area of interest, target schools. I saw you just kind of like blanketly listed top 15s. Um, and then I'll talk about transfer admissions and kind of like how it differs from the high school application process. I don't know if you applied to top private schools or not, or if it was just a Texas public thing, but the transfer game's a little bit different than like the high school admissions games for kind of the top 15 private colleges. And just out of curiosity, what are you trying to do career wise or like major wise, just so I have a little context? Okay. You don't want to be a quant though. You'd rather work in tech, or what does that look like to you? Okay, so you don't really care. You just want to work with data and like whatever. Do you want to work for another company and be an industry, or do you want to do your own thing and work at an early stage entity? Or you don't know? Yeah. Okay. So yeah, don't ever talk about Citadel or Jane Street in transfer applications. It'll get your app thrown in the trash. I hate them, and I'll explain why in a second. Data science is cool. Being interested in math is fine. Um, just out of curiosity, did you take SAT or ACT ever? Okay, you're going to need to take that. One, because a lot of these firms want to see your SAT score, and two, about two-thirds of the top schools are going to require an SAT or an ACT score. But for the fields you're talking about, if you gravitate into that, whether it's investment banking, whether it's bond funds, trading funds, a lot of them will ask for your SAT score. So just be prepared for that. Okay, so here, I'll give you the quick background on me, and then I want to hear more about what you're drawn to, and then we'll talk about transfers. So the quick backstory on me, I grew up in the DC burbs. I went to this high school called Thomas Jefferson. It's ranked like top five in the country for publics. Basically, it's your typical kind of like cutthroat high school. I had a 1520, I had a 385 unweighted. My big time sink when I was in high school, though, wasn't school, it was playing soccer. So I was like a top 75 recruit in the country. My senior year, I got into a bunch of Ivy League schools. Got into Duke, got into UNC, got into Berkeley. I committed to go to Berkeley because I wanted to get off the Mid Atlantic, kind of like cultural bubble feeling. You'll see if you wind up in the Northeast, like DC, Philly, New York, Boston, all kind of have the same vibe in terms of what you're supposed to do with your career and just kind of like how the world views things, or at least like how people culturally view things. And so that part of the world, you're supposed to gravitate towards traditional career tracks, go be a banker, a doctor, a lawyer. So I committed to go to Berkeley, and then late senior year, I got a chance to try to play pro over in Spain. I took it. I ended up moving to Spain. I lived there for a year. My parents were really pissed off about the decision and the risk taking and turning down a free ride to go to college at a top school. And so I spent a year there. It didn't work out. I came back. I spent another year and a half playing the pro leagues in the US. I got hurt. That was the forcing function to go back to school for me. And at that time, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. Kind of settled on the idea of being a doctor. It would make sure or it forced me to get good grades to be competitive. And I figured it's the kind of thing that would get me out of bed when I'm 50, like helping people. So I applied to USC. I was admitted in LA. Parents congratulated me. And then to teach me a lesson, they told me they weren't going to pay my tuition. I wasn't going to get financial aid. I didn't have savings. And so I ended up going back home and I went to a community college for a summer. I got a 4.0. And then I reached out to Virginia and kind of told them what was going on, and they provisionally admitted me as like a non-degree seeking student, pending me getting good grades for a year. Then I would just be let in naturally, so I didn't have to apply that way. Um, and so as soon as I got in, it was basically I want to transfer to a better school so I can show up at like Thanksgiving and Christmas, winter break, and like throw all the criticism back in everybody's face from my family. So my dad used to be a prof at Caltech, and then he was doing World Bank work when I grew up, kind of like doing development econ. My aunt as an MD, PhD professor at Johns Hopkins. My uncle's a Harvard professor. So they were like super academically focused. So I was on this thing called College Confidential when I was sifting through all the information I could find about transfers. I think a lot of you guys who aren't direct referrals tend to come in from like TikTok, Reddit, Discord, things like that. The public domain has a lot of good information. It's just kind of hard to tell what's credible or not. And then, no offense to the banker type, but the people who tend to be most prolific in terms of dispensing advice, I found, tended to be peers, and they tended to be the kind that want to go into banking. Bankers tend to be confident, and that was just my experience personally. So I dug and dug and dug. I found somebody who had gone from NC State to one of the Ivies onto Harvard for med school. She talked about peer-reviewed research as one way to differentiate yourself. I knew how to pursue that, so I targeted some public health lab groups, got 2 pubs, had a 4.0. I was hoping to get into like Vandy or Georgetown as my targets. I got into those pretty early on. Then I ended up getting into Penn. And then after Penn, Stanford let me in, Yale let me in a week later. And then between those, I had places like Columbia, Northwestern, and Cornell. And so I went off to Stanford. I did my pre-med stuff. I was admitted to med school really early on senior year. And then I went and told my girlfriend at the time, and she was working at this fintech startup called NerdWallet, which went on to IPO. She was like employee number 12 there. And she basically said, go do some tech stuff or we're going to break up. I'm not quitting my company to go be some med student's girlfriend. So to buy myself time, I changed majors to a biotech concentration. I started taking classes with the MBAs. I took some CS classes and interned at a fintech company that went on to IPO, and basically just kind of like pulled back the curtain on what the tech ecosystem looks like. So waste your time with it. But basically I ended up starting a startup, got mentorship from some prominent people who were Stanford alumni who had built like really big companies. And then I got to the end of senior year and I still wasn't sure if I was going to go to Yale for med school or do this startup. And one of the guys that was mentoring me introed me to his unemployed friend who had been tracking my company, and his unemployed friend who wanted to work for me turned out to be the co-founder of YouTube. And so it's pretty crazy having somebody like that. And they ended up investing. I ended up dropping out of Yale med school like the first week of orientation. This advising stuff is the byproduct of kind of like the depths of that company. Basically, he joined the team. We thought we were going to be billionaires in like 3 years. Startups are hard. It's a roller coaster. Right at the start of the pandemic, I was getting ready to raise a Series A. Our arch rivals found out. They raised a $55 million Series B, basically to kill us. It worked. My investors didn't know what to do. They were all panicking, telling me to raise $40 million to compete, but they didn't have that kind of money. And then the pandemic set in and everybody wasn't sure what was going on. And so in that window of uncertainty, we ended up navigating a pivot, and the business is good now. It's self-sustaining. I ended up buying a bunch of my investors out. But I also explored this idea of building a scaled agency. And so to kind of like close this up here in like 30 seconds, basically the origin of me advising was when I first went back to community college. Ran into this guy I'd known from high school who'd been a terrible student, crossed paths, told him we could like commiserate and like grind our way out of the trenches together. And he told me he didn't care. And then a year later, he found out about me getting into Stanford and Yale and all these places. And he started asking me questions. And I just told him what I thought had been effective. He wanted me to help him. I did. He got into Yale as a transfer. He's a banker now at Goldman on the TMT team. That was the first kind of affirmation that what had worked for me could apply to others. Year 2, it was 3 people I'd known from high school, referring over younger siblings and helping those younger siblings transfer to Penn, Northwestern, and Stanford, respectively. And then everything was scaling up, kind of like casually through word of mouth. And then this whole kind of like crisis situation happened with my company. And this is where, like, I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I started entertaining convos with these people I'd helped transfer who had been pestering me to try to build a company. And so that's what you're coming through today. It's kind of like the accidental byproduct of this uncertain time. We thought we might scale it. I did my diligence on the space and realized a lot of these big companies that do this are private equity backed. I didn't want to raise external capital for advising. I'm actually like friends with some of the people I help over the years, like stay in touch with them. And so we decided to keep it small scale. So this is like 12 years deep. We've had people transfer to Stanford every year. There were 2 last year, 3 the year before. We have a lot of people at like Penn and Brown and Columbia and Northwestern, like all these kinds of schools. And I've had plenty of people come out of Texas, Texas Tech, Texas A&M, a lot of UT Austin people, SMU. So I've kind of like, these are just like in the last year. And yeah, and then everybody else on the team is up to interesting stuff. There's somebody who's a VC at OpenAI who went to Penn and then went to MIT Sloan. There's a Harvard Harvard doc. There's a Cornell MD PhD on the team. So it's just a collection of like interesting people around the table. So yeah, happy to answer questions off of that. Otherwise, I want to hear what's going on with you. So you're at Texas Tech. You are a sophomore. You're a fresh. You're entering a. Okay, so you're entering a. Wait, what's going on? Junior college. Are you transferring into Texas Tech? Is that right? Okay, and did you enroll in Texas Tech 2 years ago, or did you come in with AP credits? Okay, so basically you're just like a normal freshman. You're 18 or 19. You're starting college. You just happen to have a bunch of credits from high school. Well, okay, so like, yeah, so like dual enrollment, like AP, like that's like all like super normal. Like if you go to a decent high school, you have that. Okay, so like you're just a normal student. You're just entering junior year. Um, okay, and then what does the GPA look like? Yeah, I don't have any of that. I didn't. Yeah, I didn't see any of that. It's not in the notes on the calendar. So what's the GPA? Okay, and then okay, and then have you been doing anything extracurricularly at all? I mean, so you can just tell me, like, what's your strongest DC? Cool, cool, cool. Okay, okay, interesting. Yeah, that's good. And then, do you think it's going to lead to a potential publication as well, or like unclear? Okay, okay, cool. If that can yield a publication, let's say by early April, that's in your interest to have it do so. But the fact that you have presented some of the findings, like that's really good on the research side of things. Um, Anything else interesting and relevant, kind of like beyond the lab work on your side? Okay. Okay, cool. So, wait, are you a U.S. citizen or did you represent another country? Okay, okay, so you competed as part of Texas Tech. Okay, gotcha. Okay. Um, cool. Okay. And then you're not sure about really what you want to do. You just have an aptitude for kind of like quantitatively oriented tracks, and that's where you're at right now. Okay, cool. Um, okay. No, I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. You're good. And yeah, don't call me sir. Yeah, like no, whatever. Uh, okay. So anything else like relevant, or should I transition into kind of like what's going on with like TransferGoat versus like high school apps? I mean, yeah, you want to know like the no bullshit answer? It doesn't. There is no fit. Top schools are top schools. You got to like spend some BS through your essays to get them to like you. Uh, yeah. So like, there's no, I mean, like whatever. You know, Stanford's a technical school, right? But like they're churning out lawyers and doctors and everything else too, so nobody gives a shit. There are people that will come out of like MIT and go on to law school. Like this notion of like fit and whatever that people like waste a lot of energy and like thought on, it's pretty meaningless in my opinion. Because the top schools are all good at like everything pretty much. Yeah, I mean I see your okay transcript. No, no, go for it. Go for it. Yeah, yeah. What's up? Mm. Yeah, I mean, like, okay, so like so perfect transition to like what the heck's going on, and I'll like cover this like literally here in 1 minute. Okay, so yeah, it looks like the heaviest course load you ever had was like 12 credits. Is that right? 12, 10, 12, 13, uh, 11. No, you had 15. What is it? Spring 25. Did you take 15? No, you dropped a bunch. Oh shit. Okay, what's up with the physics class where you got a D? I don't care. I'm not like vetting you. I'm just wondering what's up with it. Okay, so okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. Yeah, you got it. Yeah, you got A's and them. Okay, okay, cool. So if you have like medical documentation and you're able to like point to that, and you probably use the additional information field in the applications, just be like, hey, like note spring 25, I had some medical issues. Here's the documentation of it. Like I took the classes properly over the summer. I got A's in them. I've never had an issue. I'm like, basically a 4.0 student. It was just a medical situation. Leave it like pretty concise and like drop that in. You should be fine. Um, and then wait, I mean, you're just providing like extra context on what's going on in your circumstances. Like what's up with the ECE? What's a DG grade? I don't know what DG is. Is that D? Okay. Yeah. Like yeah, they'll look at it, except it's scary now. We're talking like spring and fall, but summer everything was okay. Did you have like a relapse with medical issues and like why only the East class? So okay, so the issue is this, like just skimming this really quick. Typically, if somebody's claiming a medical issue, they crash out of all their classes, and then they're like, "Yeah, it was just a medical issue that semester," and then like, I'm good. Your issue is it's like spread over the spring and the fall, but then you're getting good grades in some classes, and then you got these like D pop-ups. What does the G mean, by the way? D is yeah, grade DG. Oh, drop grade. Okay, so it's not like a G. It's not like a D or something. Okay, so the only actual D is the physics. So it's okay. So DG is basically like a W. Okay, I got you. Um, hmm. Okay, so then you only have like one sketchy thing. So then yeah, like, you should be fine. Yeah, they'll look at the additional info section just to have additional context if you don't make it a part of the story that you tell in the essays themselves. Okay, so super high level, just to kind of like understand what's going on. Why I said don't say you want to be a quant. Okay, so the top private schools, whether we're talking Bryce, whether we're talking Duke, Chicago, if you're thinking you want to go into quant potentially, or you're interested in data science, you literally should just be applying to like all the top schools plus CMU. Like it's not that complicated. Um, from a recruiting standpoint, the top schools don't really, I mean, pardon me, the quant firms don't really care where you come from, but they do have a bias towards recruiting from certain kinds of schools. So like probably the lowest ranked school you really want to be targeting, uh, like Rice, like CMU, things like that. CMU is like a weird outlier because they're so good at engineering, but they're bad at other things, and that's why their ranking isn't higher. But just from like a purely like STEM oriented perspective, they're like really strong, right? So, um, if you have inclinations towards early stage stuff, just getting into classically ranked top private schools is in your interest because a lot of the way capital flows in VC or even in banking or recruiting into banking, if you don't be a quant and you go be an investment banker, it's all kind of like pedigree based, right? They just want to tap the network and like talk to each other. The reason they're able to, these are like target schools, right? So that's why you want to go to them. Okay, so at a high level, all of these kind of like top private schools, they have mandate to build diversity across their freshman class. So I saw you're like part Native American too. Like that's in your advantage. One of my friends was Native American at Stanford. She like crushed it. But I'll explain kind of like how you want to angle within this. So all of these schools have this notion of whatever they want to build in terms of like diversity across the freshman class. So they're worried about getting people from every state. You know, they need people from New Mexico and West Virginia on top of Texas and Florida. They want people who are going to major in these more obscure majors that not everybody's drawn to, on top of the obvious ones. They also have to worry about like legacies and high net worth donors who are buying buildings and all this. They have to worry about recruited athletes like I was to fill on the sports teams. They have to worry about ethnic diversity, and then they have to worry about like socioeconomic diversity. In transfer admissions, they don't really care because they already built all the diversity they need across the class. So the numbers are small. They're just looking at what you bring to the table and who you are as an individual. And so what this is going to functionally look like is a school like Rice, for example. They're going to subdivide Texas into a couple of pieces because a lot of people will apply to Texas. But a school like Columbia, for example, all of Texas will be your competition. They'll lump all of like Louisiana and Arkansas and probably Mississippi and Alabama together as a region. And so they're going to screen off GPA. They're going to screen off standardized test scores where applicable. More and more and more of the schools that you're going to be targeting are going to care about your SAT scores. So just be prepared for that. It sucks, but you probably have to deal with it to maintain full optionality. And I also think for what you want to recruit into, they're going to care about seeing an SAT score for the quantitative fields. Um, okay, so you have good grades, assuming they look at your additional info section, they don't worry about your D in physics that you then made up, you then get into the real read. And the real read, what we're really being judged on in terms of the admissions process is our recommendation letters, our extracurricular profile, our essays. And you're going to have some admissions officer that's assigned to this region, and their job is basically to filter and screen who they like and who they don't like. And so they're going to pick their favorites and carry them through. And it's really subjective. It's kind of, do you meet the minimal academic standards? And then do they like your story? And I should also clarify what you want to do in the quantitative field. If you want to work at Jane Street or Citadel, they have really high quantitative expectations. But for transfer admissions, when you see the high school averages for schools like Columbia or Duke or Rice or whatever it may be, you don't actually have to score as high. I've had people with 1300s get into Stanford and Yale before, just to kind of like give you an idea of what you're targeting. That's totally fine, but that's not going to carry you for competitive quant roles, whereas it'll clear kind of like the threshold they need for transfer admissions. And it doesn't get reported to U.S. News, so it doesn't influence the rankings, so they don't really care, if that makes sense. So don't stress your standardized test scores for transfer purposes, but like for quant companies, like it actually matters a lot. Then they don't care. Then you're totally cool. Then it doesn't matter. Yeah. So just aim for like 1300 and you'll be safe as a transfer student. For Citadel, they're going to be looking for like 750 plus math, right? Okay. So the real read then. So once you clear the academic thresholds, hurdles, then what they're really judging us on, it's Recs, ECs, essays. I'll go into detail on each in a second. Then your AO just kind of like picks and chooses who they like based on the potential they see in you, what you're spending your time on, kind of like how you sell the vision of what you want to accomplish in life. And then they pull you through to their committee week where they all kind of like debate this stuff and they make a presentation on us and they become your advocate. They become your champion to get you the votes to get in. So all of this is to say, like you're trying to sell a story and a vision of what you could become and what you're choosing to spend time on to this admissions officer like you. The number one thing to understand about the admissions officers is almost universally they tend to hold humanities degrees. So they are the people who go to good schools. They're going to Rice or whatever, but they're majoring in like comparative literature or art history. And when you meet them as freshmen, you're like, that's cool. What do you want to do when you graduate? Do you want to go to law school? Because that's typically what they do. And the answer is no. And then you ask them if they want to be an academic, and the answer is no. And then it kind of becomes a question of like, well, what are you trying to do in life? Um, what's the plan post school? And they don't have a plan. They're in school because they like learning and they like intellectual growth. And then senior year kind of like creeps up on them and they still don't know what they want to do. And that's how they tend to wind up in the admissions department. They're scrambling for a job. They need something to earn money. And so that's how they wind up there. So all of this is to say, when you sell the story of why you like quantitatively oriented fields, why you like data science, just understand you're trying to convince a humanities major to understand why you like data science. And so when you think about how you depict this, and I get a lot of people that, are CS oriented that want to go to Stanford because I went there. AOs don't care that you like math or you like stats in a vacuum. It's just a skill. They don't care that you're good at it. You're a name in a pile. What they want to understand is like how do you see this skill or like knowledge you acquire? How can you apply it to real problems to solve real problems? Does that make sense? So it's yeah, so it's just like a tool. So keep that in the back of your mind. And when you talk about what you're passionate about, it isn't like an overly sophisticated kind of like science student engineer's perspective on why this is interesting. You're trying to tell the story of a humanities major in a way they understand. So just keep that in the back of your head all the time. It's always you're trying to convince a humanities major to like you. Okay, so the stuff you have control over: recommendation letters. You're going to need two of these. You're in a lab, so that's awesome. Use that as like a supplemental rec letter unless this lab that you're in, the PI, the prof, also teaches a class you've taken, then you can use it for both, which is really nice. But if you haven't, if you're just doing it in your extracurricular free time, that's fine. It's just a supplemental one. You need two academic rec letters, which is, from people who have taught classes where you've gotten a letter grade. Like that's the most important thing. The focus of the rec letter shouldn't just be about your academic aptitude. Like, of course, you should be an A student, so go to your prof so you got good grades in, or do this fall. But you also want to make sure that you're contributing to like classroom discourse. So if you're thinking about data science or machine learning or any of these things, like Anthropic versus OpenAI happened 3 months ago, and Anthropic like bailed on the government. They're worried about like regulation and kind of like guidelines in terms of how it's being applied. Be the person that's bringing up contemporary events in a classroom discussion where you can, such that it shows you're engaged in what's going on in the world. Basically, they don't want you to behave like, and like pre-med students are like this. We're really good at regurgitating facts out of a textbook, but we don't know what else is going on. We're just like machines that can like regurgitate. Don't be like that. Be the person that's contributing to classroom discussion. Know what's going on in the world. Like try to stimulate conversation in class when the opportunity presents itself as it relates to the topic in class. The other thing you can do that tends to look really good is help out your peers who are struggling. And you can do that in labs, in recitation, in smaller classes that aren't so big. Um, but be the person that's compassionate and altruistic and thoughtful. It isn't just about you getting A's for yourself. You're willing to help other people. Professors notice that. The TAs in the labs notice it. And then it allows them to talk about that in the rec letter and say, hey, not only is he a good student and he's getting an A, not only is he adding value to the classroom discussion, he's a valuable member to have here. He knows what's going on, but he's also looking out for other people. He's a kind person. That reflects really well on you, and it makes you likable. And at the end of the day, remember, you want a humanities major to believe in you and like you. Two rec letters that talk about you, the person, as much as your academic abilities, is a really nice thing to have. Okay, extracurriculars, you typically get one of three options here. You're already doing one of these things, so good on you. First one is do some kind of research that lends to a publication, conference presentation, posters, any of this stuff. You're already doing this, so that's great. Ideally, you get a publication by the end of, I'd say, like April, when you can send update letters in, or early April, I should say. Most of these apps are due in March. Some are due in February, but mostly March. You have until that first week in April to send an update to them that can be added to your file. So if you can get a publication finalized, at least submitted for peer review and approved, like that's fantastic. Your second option, it goes full Silicon Valley. Find a problem in the world you want to solve, build a product, monetize it, get people using it. I used to discourage people from doing this, and then AI came to be, and you could vibe code your way into product pretty quickly. You can even use drop and drag builders to build product. So if there's any piece of hardware or software, any problem you want to solve that you can actually solve for, it is possible to build companies. we've had like 5 people in the last 2 cycles build Y Combinator member companies and raise millions of dollars. And these are like 19, 18-year-olds doing it. So like one guy, he got into YC his freshman year. He raised $5 million on a $25 million valuation last March. So people are doing it. Your third option, I guess I'd call this like an awareness campaign, but it encompasses everything from building a student group that's trying to do some good to building your own organization that's trying to drive awareness to something or help people in some capacity, or maybe you do a podcast or a newsletter, or I had somebody start her own competition around healthcare policy reform. There's lots of different ways you can play this, but you're looking for an opportunity to build something that kind of scales up a little bit and helps people or makes people aware of an issue in the world. And you either have a really clear position on it and an opinion, and you become kind of like the face of this idea and you're trying to raise awareness of it, or you're just trying to get people more aware of something, and then scale the footprint of that. And so those are kind of like the 3 buckets things tend to fall into. People will also work jobs, and that's totally cool. I've had people just work 9 to 5 jobs and make money because they have to pay their bills, and AOs respect people who are just like grinding. So that's also okay. Um, they're more interested in kind of like, what are you choosing to spend your time on topically, or if you have to work, you have to work. And then they're trying to then understand, why you choose to spend your time on that. And then kind of like how you saw the vision of what you want to do when you graduate. So the last piece, the essays, there's a 650-word essay, that really long one you saw, like Vandy does this, why do you want to transfer? And it isn't 650 words about why you want to transfer. There's one paragraph about why Texas Tech isn't an ideal fit for you. The rest of that thing is the story of you, your life, what you've been up to, childhood, what shaped your perspective on what you want to accomplish in the world, how Texas Tech has been rewarding, and it's helped kind of clarify certain ambitions you hold. But here's where it falls short in like 1 or 2 key ways. You just need 1 or 2 good reasons. It doesn't need to be a lot. And then they want to understand what it is you want to do in the future. The supplemental prompts, they repeat a lot. And so, if you apply to 10 or 15 schools, just pay attention to them, because you're going to build kind of like the foundation of an essay, and it can be reused again and again and again in terms of the story that you're telling. So if you're talking about a community you're a part of, and how you help them out, a lot of schools ask that prompt. Just edit it a little bit, and you can keep reusing the same thing. So it's really easy to apply to 10 or 12 schools. You're not writing 50 essays from scratch. You're just writing 4 or 5 essays, and then you're just kind of copy editing it to suit. And kind of the whole picture of that is you want them to understand the kinds of things you're passionate about, why you're passionate about it, who you help, what you care about. They want to get a feel for why you are the way you are and what you could become in the future. And that's pretty much the game. They're going to look at it, and then they're just going to decide, like, do they like you based on how you tell the story of what you've done. So questions on your side about anything I talked about, or anything at all? Yeah, so like your major selection, yeah, major selection doesn't matter for private schools. You can apply to any major you feel like. They don't care in transfer admissions, because if every one of the 50 people that Stanford admitted declared CS, okay, so like one thing to understand, when you apply to schools, top private schools, there's really kind of like 2 things, 2 paths that take place for like 99% of the schools. You're either applying to like, what Columbia or Penn does, or Cornell. You're applying to a school or a college underneath the university umbrella, so like School of Engineering. And then you get accepted, and then you're undeclared, and then you choose your major, 2 months, 3 months after you're enrolled as a student, the first week. They don't really care. There's no rules. So you can say whatever. You can say CS, you can avoid CS, and pick that other thing you said. But the moment you get on campus, you don't have a major. They don't even know what you said in your application. You do whatever you feel like doing inside the engineering school. The other flavor of what's going on is like what Brown does, or Stanford. You apply to the overarching university, you get accepted, you can choose any major you want at all. They don't care. There's no rules. I had a friend that claimed he wanted to be a music major in his apps, and then within 3 months he's a CS major once he actually chose his major. So it doesn't matter. Your other question, U Chicago is the weird outlier school compared to all the others in the sense that they like people who are really academically inclined. Um, so they're attracting a lot of the people that are kind of like the eccentric academic types who like grinding and taking classes and being challenged and kind of having school absorb all the free time. Um, so you're going to get this prompt that's like super abstract. It's their creative prompt. It's my least favorite prompt in all of like college admissions because it's not my forte in the sense that like I don't love it, but it gives you freedom to do creative writing time. So my kind of like joke with the people I'm helping that apply there, it's like go like wander the desert and like start hallucinating and be inspired and then write your essay then because they really like kind of like quirky creative stuff for you Chicago, but they're the only outlier. Like literally everywhere else you're telling like the idea of like trying to build some story to fit each school I think is not constructive. You got to figure out what you believe in, what you're passionate about, and even for you Chicago it's the same case. They just have that one outlier essay. Like what do you want an AO to think about you as a student? Like do you want them to believe you're going to go be a quant and work at Citadel? Don't do that. If you want to tell them a story about whatever you want to tell them about, like they don't care about your major, they want to understand what you want to do in life. A major is just something you pick later, so it's pretty much an afterthought. They don't actually care because they know they can't hold you to anything. You're not actually committed to any major focus. So my advice to you is like think about what you actually care about in the world and what you want to spin a story around in terms of what you're passionate about and drawn to. And it isn't an academic discipline unless you claim you want to go be a professor or something and help people better understand whatever subfield it is you want to go after within CS or within data science. Like otherwise, you need to be thinking about these fields as tools that you can then go apply to real problems. And then what are the problems you care about? Yeah, but I mean, like, but that's like, yeah, I usually tell people like apply to 8 to 12 schools. I think we cap out at like 15 schools. Um, uh, I mean, like those are too similar, right? Like the way I see schools, I don't think there's a lot of difference. Like in the grand scheme of things, you can accomplish anything out of Rice that you can accomplish out of Columbia, that you can accomplish out of Penn or Northwestern or Chicago. Those are all like the same difference to me. In terms of getting admitted to these schools, and I have people that we've gotten into all of them, and you talk to them, and it's like all the same crap. Like we're not learning different data science at Stanford at the lower levels that you are at Texas Tech, right? It's all online. So school isn't about what you're learning academically. It's about like the people you're around, the professors and what they're passionate about. Some of these like very upper level classes create opportunities that are atypical. The basic foundational education, it's free. Like you don't have to go to college to learn to do this stuff. Um, Yeah, so in terms of getting admitted, there's still the same difference to me. Like somebody that's I'm helping that's writing essays for Rice and Columbia, it's the same thing. The only outlier here, which is what you're getting at, is like MIT, Caltech have a massive preference for people who produce tier one published research. They're literally going to go bring in a faculty member to evaluate if your stuff's real or not. Stanford won't do this. Harvard won't do it. Yale won't do it. They don't care. They're just like, oh, you got published? Cool. They want to know the rest of the story. MIT and Caltech will vet what you're doing and see if it's actually legit because they're looking for the 6 people that slip through the cracks before that are doing really, kind of like groundbreaking stuff. And then when you tell the story of what you're passionate about, what you're doing, you can be much more technical in terms of the depiction of this than you would for all the other schools. The other schools, you better serve it up in a way that a humanities major gets, right? And so, like, I had somebody like this. They got into Caltech last year and Stanford, the stories were the same. It's just the essays that were presented to Caltech and MIT were more technically rigorous in terms of what was going on because they knew a faculty member that like really understood what was going on is going to be evaluating it, and so you want to look sophisticated in that way. But this idea of like people sitting around and trying to understand the difference between Rice and Northwestern and Stanford and Vanderbilt and Duke and Penn and Columbia, they're all the same difference, man. Like they're not. Yeah, that's that's not true. We have a lot of people getting in normal for U Chicago every year. Full pay, yes. So U Chicago, Northwestern, WashU, Brown, you better be full pay there. Or you're not going to get it. Um, they heavily weight financial need. The rest of the schools, they don't care. But yeah, you don't need to. You can, and since like if U Chicago is your first choice and it's like your strong preference, you might as well, right? It helps you. It probably like doubles your odds. Yeah. Oh, well, okay. So it's like people don't want to re-engage just because sometimes we have people that transfer twice. Also, they will. We only charge them half. We don't charge them for extracurricular help again, but like copy editing and like helping with the essays, it's work, and it's new work again next cycle. So it's 50% for the second cycle. It depends on what your spread looks like. It depends on your fall grades, and it depends on what your justification is for the D and then the W's. So I would encourage you to spread your list around. And you started out talking about schools like Michigan. When I'm helping people just to like not be crazy about what their target list looks like, you should be layering in schools like Mich, CMU, and then you can pick and choose what you want thereafter. Like if you really want to go into tech, USC is underrated because it's on the West Coast and LA has a lot of companies. So it's easy to get hired out of there. Plus, it's a big what's the best way to say it? Like one of the perks of going to a private school is the alumni like to help other alumni. So I know a lot of people that went to Berkeley, and Berkeley's a great school. They don't they don't look out for each other. It's kind of weird. Whereas the USC people are always trying to like give each other jobs. You're like buying into this network of people. So that's like a school to consider. In your case, if you're really drawn to data science, like a top school that I would not apply to if I was you, if you're purely focused on the tech orientation in this, would be like Georgetown. If you want to go be a banker, then my advice changes. Then go, to McDonough at Georgetown and focus on a quant oriented field. So like I think that gets to like your original question is like, do I help kind of like pick and choose schools? Like I suppose in that way. Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah. And the way like I just kind of like laid that out, like if you feel like you are oriented towards Wall Street and want to get a job there as you think about this more, then Georgetown is a good school. If you feel like you're oriented more towards the Bay or Austin and want to get into tech, then Georgetown is not a good school. So yeah, I suppose like sure do help advise in terms of like picking schools, but I don't think it's that sophisticated. But then maybe it's like just easy for me to kind of like parse these differences quickly. But yeah, like happy to help pick schools. For everything you're talking about, like yeah, it's academically technically rigorous. I didn't apply there because I didn't want to go to a school like that. And every year we get people trying to treat. I don't know what the excuse is for what happened with your stuff, and I don't know what your fall grades are going to look like. So, like, if you just had a 3.92 GPA, yes. One other thing I'll say, since your friend brought this up, it doesn't look like you've ever had a semester where you've earned a full time course load. You do need to do that this fall. I agree with what they said. So, you've always been light on your credits. My advice for people is take 14 to 17 credits in a given semester because that's normal on paper. I understand you've never had to do that except the one semester where you ended up withdrawing a bunch of stuff. You need to prove to them you can handle a full time course load and get A's. And by full time course load, I don't mean 12 credits. Like that's fine, but you need to show like 14, 15, 16 credits, like a real full time course load. I mean, like, is there a reason you wouldn't take them at Texas Tech? Okay, okay. Um, Are you in state at Texas Tech or not? Okay, so usually in-state schools, like they're not differentiating between cost once you hit like full-time course load. So usually, and like they may just do things differently down there. Once you hit 12 credits, they don't care if you're taking 12 or 16 or 18, it's all the same cost usually. You're like full-time student. So if they're charging per credit, sure, but like in-state at Texas Tech isn't that much, is it? It's like 5K a semester for a tour. And so I mean, like hustle this summer and like go do anything and just pay for a normal full-time course load. Yeah, so I'm available like WhatsApp. Message me whenever you have quick questions, and then I have Calendly, which is available like 4 or 5 days a week, depending on the week, and people can schedule stuff with me there. And like, yeah, I try to be flexible if people are like, "Hey, here's some like emergency situation," but I can't guarantee that I can literally be available the next day. Like, sometimes it might be like 48 hours. If you know, if you're hitting me up at 9 p.m. and you're like, "Let's meet like tomorrow before noon," like it depends on my schedule for like last minute stuff. So I'm not like on demand that way, but I'm pretty flexible. Does that make sense? Until you're like done. So like basic like key milestones will be focusing on extracurriculars the whole way through until April and trying to like build something big. Um, and then essay season, like writing on that front, really starts, I'd say, kind of like around Thanksgiving or like December. Don't screw up your finals. So the one reason I'm saying like it kind of starts between the two, if you can, like if you're self-restrained and you're not going to distract yourself writing the essays and screw up your finals, like totally cool. Then you can start chipping away at this in Thanksgiving. The problem is I get some people who over Thanksgiving break they start worrying about their essays because they're really eager to like write their essays, and then they're scared of their finals, and rather than doing the work to study for their finals, they just focus on the essays and they screw up their finals. Does that make sense? Because they feel like they're doing something productive, but it's not what you should be spending your time on. So during final season, like make sure you get A's on your final exams, and then we can re-engage on the essays. The essays don't take more than like 8 weeks, even for like bad writers. It's not that bad. And then that gives you plenty of time to finish things up over winter break. But yeah, that's pretty structured in terms of like timelines and like when to get us drafts and things like that. There's like three timelines. Yeah, there's like three layouts for that. So like don't worry about that. The EC side of stuff is less structured because it tends to ebb and flow. Typically, I would say like there's stuff you do out the gate to build the appropriate foundation for what you're trying to do extracurricularly. And like in your case, you should be pushing your publication, but maybe there's something else we can do here also. But um, there's foundational steps you go through, and then it gets kind of real. Like you're actually like trying to help people in real life. You're talking to people in real life, like that. That tends to be more dynamic, and so that's why like everybody in terms of like EC help, it's unlimited. Just like hit me up whenever you have questions because I don't want to limit you on that front because things are dynamic. So I treat this the same way I treat like when I'm advising like fellow startup founders that are early stage, and I'm like affiliated with a bunch of like this thing StartX, which is like Stanford's version of Y Combinator. Um, I want to make sure people like get all the help they need, but things are dynamic. You have to be able to like share the updates with me, and then we figure out how to leverage the opportunities. There will be certain points in time where maybe it's appropriate to like reach out to press and try to get attention on what you're doing, or do a bunch of outreach to other people at other college campuses. It kind of depends on which direction you take it in, but that's basically like the next step of this. Whether I'm helping you or not, your kind of like primary homework assignment, if you will, it should be to think about what you care about in the world. So if you like data science, what are the use cases behind that? And what are the use cases behind it that are going to make sense to a humanities major as well? Does that make sense? Cool. Yeah, spend your time on that. That's what you want to be thinking about right now. That and you're probably for to maintain full optionality in terms of target list, you're probably going to need to be thinking about taking SAT or ACT. It doesn't need to be crazy high, but you do need to put a score down. Otherwise, you're going to lose 1300. Yeah, like 1,300, and I think you're safe. Did you go to some like super bougie high school, or did you just go to like a normal high school? Okay. What's your hometown? I know I saw it, but okay. Is it West Texas? Like I know where Lubbock is. I just don't know. Gotcha. Yeah, aim for like a 1,300, and you should be fine. But that's not fine for Citadel, right? Like I said that about. Yeah, cool. Um, it doesn't matter. 0%. I took the easiest class I could find to balance out. So I was a pre-med and I was taking physics, bio, and chem concurrently plus lab, so it sucked. I went looking for easy classes. I read my professor. I ended up taking an intro to Islam class. Uh, I was the only non-Muslim student there. The professor was Afghani. He graduated from University of Kabul in a degree, like whatever their version of like theology is, like Islamic studies or whatever. And he wrote my rec letter. So he didn't even have an education in the U.S. He did not speak fluent English. Zero, like I'm sure the rec letter, like right, but he was. You should not. You shouldn't be looking at rec letters. That's like forbidden. Trouble for that. We take a box that says like we haven't seen the rec letters. So careful. No. So basically, like, yeah, I know what your friend said. Like, no, it doesn't matter. You just want to get the two people that know you the best, that can like humanize you and like tell your story well. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's fine. I had a Texas A&M guy this year, and his dream was to go to Macombs, and he just wanted to break into banking, and then he ended up getting into a whole bunch of other places, but he also got into Macombs. So like, yeah, like Texas is fine. I just say like like us as a collective, we're taking people whose dream is to go to like Texas, and then we're getting them into Columbia. Does that make sense? Yeah. So like we're comfortable applying to like all those other schools, but like if you're like a 2.5 student and your dream is to go to Texas A&M, like you're like I'm too we're too specialized on like a different focus, right? Like we're here to help the people who are doing well or want to do well level up into the most competitive places. Does that make sense? Yeah, that's a good question. They're going the for transfer admissions purposes and for grad school admissions purposes. If you do this, they're going to draw a line uh, from like a timing perspective on when you graduated high school. So anything that took place, even if it's dual enrollment, in another uni, whatever, it's not going to affect your quote unquote like college grades. They're just going to look at what happened since you graduated high school. So yeah, like that's totally fine. I was gonna say like I don't pretend to claim that I'm like a better writer than any of the other deputies on the team, and they are good at places. Like one of them got like four people into U Chicago last year. I only had like two, but I didn't have that many apply. The only school where, for whatever reason, I think I have like an advantage seems to be Stanford over the rest of the people. So if you're really obsessed with Stanford, that's where I do well. The rest of these places, you're fine with them, and you can save a lot of money. And they all went to like top schools too. Like some of them went to Stanford, some of them went to Penn, and one of them, where'd she go? She went to Penn, and then she went to U Chicago for her MBA. So like, you're not. It's not like they're weak people and any like they're good. Yeah, what's up? Did it break up or what happened? Yeah, you're gonna get a follow-up email when we get off that just breaks down all our options, and you can, ask Demi about all that, payment plans, like anything else that's going on. And like, yeah, honestly, like to save money and kind of like balance everything, you don't need me unless you're obsessed with Stanford to lead things. So, if you're really just into Chicago, like the deputy folks are like very good. Like totally, you're in good hands with that, and you can save quite a bit of money. But you'll get a follow up email. And just let us know if you have questions from there. Yeah, totally, totally. Yeah, you have to be full pay for Chicago, Northwestern, Brown, Wash U, and like I wish. U Chicago probably has like a 15 to 20% transfer ED acceptance rate. Um, uh, yeah, like our people do well. Like as long as you have like a broad list and like kind of like the bottom of the schools will help people target will be like NYU, Michigan, USC, things like that. Yeah, you'll get into schools like that with your GPA. Like we don't have people like not getting in. The people that don't get in are the people that are already going to like U Chicago and they're like, I only want to go to Harvard, Yale, or Stanford. And it's like, well, they have 1% acceptance rate. Like you understand what you're doing. And they're like, yeah, I only want to go there. And then that's hard, right? Like even if you do everything perfectly and you're like the greatest applicant we've ever had, like I can kind of pick out who's going to get in, but it's still, dude, like it's still like a 1 in 3 chance for like the greatest people ever because they're so competitive. You know what I mean? It gets much easier once you leave that tier of schools. Yeah, I don't even deal with that. You can chat with Demi about that. Like I don't run operations on anything, so she'll like liaise with you, and you can communicate with her in terms of like what your choices are and then what that looks like. But yeah, like typically everything is due once you submit your final essays. Oh, the what? Okay, okay. I'll check it out, but like you shouldn't be like looking at your rack letters. It can get you in trouble. Yeah. Cool. All right, you'll get a follow up email, and then just let us know if you have questions from there. Cool. Man. It's a pleasure meeting.